everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. I'm super excited for this conversation with our freight farmer based in Celebration, Florida. His name is Sean Toor, and he's the operations manager at AdventHealth. My name is Allison Rabchnik. I am Director of Business Development at Freight Farms. And for those of you that aren't familiar, our mission at Freight Farms is to build accessible, modular, vertical farming technology that empowers people to grow fresh, healthy food in their local communities, wherever that may be. We're most well known for our container farms, and you'll be able to see how you can integrate a freight farm into your culinary program in today's conversation. We're going to cover a lot today. So after a quick intro from Sean, we'll jump into how they implemented vertical farming at AdventHealth. We'll learn a little bit about what they're growing. We'll get an update on how their farming operations are going, things to consider when it comes to finances and operational costs, how they've engaged their staff and community through the farms, and discuss the benefits and successes they've experienced from freight farming. Then we'll cruise through advice for other healthcare institutions and really anyone interested in container farming. And we'll discuss what the future looks like for AdventHealth before we do a live Q&A session at the end. Just some housekeeping items. Be sure to put all of your questions in the Q&A section of your Zoom panel. We'll be answering them as we go and addressing them also at the end. And then lastly, the event is being recorded and we'll share that with everyone within a few days. All right, let's jump in. Sean, welcome. Could you please introduce yourself, your role at Advent, and your background?
Yes, my name's Sean Toor. I grew up here in Kissimmee, Florida. I'm the operations manager at AdventHealth. We currently have 3 container farms. We started with 1 and then added 2 recently in the past 8 months. I've been doing hydroponics and agriculture for the past 10 years before I got into running the freight farms. And yeah, everything's been running really good right now. And I'm excited to talk about, how we implemented everything and kind of how we run things at our campus.
Awesome. So could you start off just by providing a brief overview of AdventHealth? So both the system and then your specific campuses that you serve?
Yeah, so AdventHealth is a healthcare facility. We have roughly over 50 campuses in 13 different states. We here in Central Florida, we have 8 campuses. We have freight farms responsible for providing produce for 3 of the campuses. That would be the East Orlando campus, the Celebration campus, and the Kissimmee campus. All 3 freight farms are located at the Celebration campus where we work, and then we deliver our produce to the other 2 campuses. And then we also grow a lot of produce for our food pantries for the different employees.
Awesome. I know AdventHealth is a real innovative health system. And last year, about this time, actually, your team won the DNV Healthcare Innovation Award. Can you speak about what that meant for your team and for the organization?
Yeah, the DNV award was a huge, progressive stone for us because it kind of just proved that, other healthcare facilities and programs are also interested as, providing food as medicine to patients and trying to get, better food in the hospitals for everybody. Hospitals are kind of notorious for not having the best food. So this was a way that we were able to implement at least fresh produce and salads for all of our employees, patients, doctors, and everybody that comes to visit our campus.
Okay, great. So let's now get into some of the details of how you actually implemented vertical farming at Advent. So what motivated your hospital to bring a freight farm onto the hospital campus in the first place?
So originally, what kind of started the talk was a lot of the produce we were getting. By the time we would get it, we were throwing away roughly 20 to 30% of it because it was rotted and wilty, and then it just wouldn't stand up to the elements of sitting on the salad bar for a long period of time. There were some complaints about our salad and our produce not being very nice and appealing. And then, we wanted to have, so we're a hospital, we wanted to have a very appealing salad bar to kind of get people to choose a healthier option over, pizza, chicken nuggets, and stuff like that. So originally we wanted to get better produce. So the first talk was about setting up a greenhouse. So they wanted to do a greenhouse, and that was kind of the plan. But every time they plotted out to build the greenhouse somewhere, it was room for a new tower for patients. The area, Orlando, Central Florida, is growing like crazy, especially Celebration. So, there's a need for beds for all these patients that are coming to the hospital. So our main idea was to do the greenhouse, but then we kind of came across Freight Farm and how we were able to just take up 4 or 5 parking spots and be able to grow roughly 2.5 acres of produce in a small condensed area. And
Mhm.
then we also like the option because it was indoor farming compared to outside. It's very hot here in Florida, and greenhouses trap in all that heat. And you got to use a lot of ventilation to keep it cool in there. So we like the idea of keeping it indoors, pesticide free, fungicide free. Those were the main reasons why we implemented the Freight Farm.
Awesome. And can you touch a little bit on the size of your specific hospital? I believe your Celebration campus is one of the largest within the Advent network. Is that right? And just maybe talk a little bit about who the farm serves within your population.
Yeah, Celebration is definitely one of our biggest campuses. I believe it's just roughly around 400 beds. We have roughly over 900 employees. So we do have a lot of people that come to our campus. Um, our freight farm, we bring all of our produce to the cafeterias. That goes out to patient meals, that goes to employee meals, our salad bar. We have 2 different cafes. We have one that does so kind of like soup, salads, and sandwiches. And then we have our own main salad bar area. We also put it on the physician's lounge so the physicians can come through and get, fresh kale salads, fresh, different types of lettuce and things like that. And then we also have a food pantry that we donate a lot of our produce to. And then also any of our scraps, anything that doesn't meet our standards, we have a school across the street that we bring all of our waste to, and then we feed that to their chickens. So we try not to waste anything.
That's great. Full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So, were there any initial concerns or challenges in bringing this idea to life? And if so, how were they addressed internally?
I guess the main concern was getting the right operator in there to run it and then seeing the need for it. So it is an investment um, for the campus. And, we are a healthcare facility. We don't have an agriculture department. It's kind of new when you're talking to people in the hospital section. There's a lot of pushback from some people that are, kind of, hey, we're healthcare, we're not agriculture. Why are we getting into this? But then once we got the first freight farm and kind of showed the proof of concept, and everything went smoothly and it was producing as it should, we were able to, show how useful the freight farm was and what a good program it was. And that's why we purchased 2 more.
Okay, that's great. And could you walk us through the process that your team went through to actually implement the freight farms and what were the key steps and considerations?
The That's a little difficult for me because the original first freight farm I wasn't there for, but I know that we were able to work through using foundation money. So we have a foundation that goes into basically those funds are used for benefiting the community, the employees, and overall the mission of Advent Health. So we were able to access that, show that the freight farm basically hit all the ideals behind the foundation. And we were able to access those funds to purchase the first freight farm. And then from there, we were able to buy the 2 more farms after we showed how useful and good the farms were for our community.
Okay, great. So any idea, and I know you weren't there for the first one, but any idea how long it actually took from the initial idea to actually having the farms being operational?
It roughly took about, I would say, 8 to 12 months of talking, viewing, working with you guys, seeing what the farms do, um, finding the area for the farms, right? That was an important thing. Where can we put this farm so we don't have to move in the future? Getting all the electrical set up, working with the town of Celebration. This is a Disneyland town, so we had to get everything approved that way. and just finding the right area. And then once it got in, setting it up, was pretty much a breeze. And to get everything going was pretty simple. Working with you guys, you guys do a great job, working out all the logistics parts of getting the farms here. So on our end, it was just the convincing of the upper executives to, kind of pull this and, to kind of dip our hands into the agricultural food so we can control the produce that we put out for our employees and patients.
Right. And I'll dig into some of those operational questions in a bit. But before that, can you describe, and maybe probably better for the second two farms, but what was the delivery process like? And did you experience any zoning hurdles or challenges?
No, not really. Zoning was fine. We just had to run it through the town of Celebration, run it through, obviously, our engineering department at the hospital. They do a great job, making sure that the delivery, once it was there, we can, get the farms pitched right. There was a little bit of scheduling, I should say, and organizing the right people to be there. You guys work with the crane company and, the trucking company to get it down here. But once it gets down here, knowing our area to place it, how to pitch it right, having the right people there to kind of, everything was done in a day. So it was very quick. Once, that delivery day's there, it was all done. Not even a day, I should say 4 to 6 hours. The freight farm was offloaded, set up, repitched, and we started setting it up. And then it took us roughly 5 days per farm to set everything up, get all of our, seeds planted, and get everything rocking and rolling.
Okay, awesome. And where do the farms live on campus in relation to the main hospital?
We're on the south side of the hospital. We are actually in the parking lot of the Nicholson Center. We are in between Highway 417 and the hospital. So we're right there. We're visible by 417 right off the highway. If you come through the hospital, they're pretty hard to miss. They're right there as you drive in.
And obviously, our farms need access to Wi-Fi, access to water and power. Was that a pretty seamless experience getting those three things?
Yeah, so getting the power, we were able to hook up to the Nicholson Center. We did the 3-phase connection, so it was a little bit more efficient for us. I would say water, the farms on our terms, it's so humid here in Florida. The farms, we don't keep them hooked up to a main supply of water majority of the time. Only time is when we do water turnovers to make sure all our nutrients are balanced and stuff, is we'll drain everything. We take that water, since it's nutrient dense water, we actually feed it to all of our shrubs and plants around the hospital. And then we refill our tanks, with a city water. But for the majority of the time, the farm produces enough water to feed all of our plants. So we actually end up draining more water than we end up filling. I would say one hurdle that was an issue with the first farm was nothing on your guys' end, but it was on our end. The hospital, has a lot of critical information. So our IT team is ruthless on stopping, information from leaving our hospital's network. So at the beginning, we tried to hook up to the hospital's network, but it would allow all the information to come in, but no information to leave, because we kept getting kicked off because of the firewalls. So we ended up having to set up our own hotspot for the farms. So that way we weren't connected to the hospital in any sort of way, and that there couldn't be any breach of information through the farms.
That's a good workaround.
Yeah.
When the farms were delivered, especially the second one, can you describe the reactions when they first arrived on campus, maybe by some of the employees or visitors?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, kind of a groundbreaking thing. Everyone's really excited. The wraps on them look awesome. Everyone comes by and sees them. They do have, it's different when you see it online comparatively to when you see it in person. When you see it in person, it really, you're like, whoa, you turn the lights on, you see all the plants, you see everything living. We definitely get a different reaction from people in person than we do showing videos or commercials or ads that we do with the farms and stuff like that. So definitely having everybody come by and see the 3 farms, it was kind of a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's great. And the slide I have up on the screen right now actually shows one of the vinyl wraps on your farm. So just for everybody listening, that's definitely something that we work with all of our customers on, is designing custom wraps like this. All right, so let's dig into some of the details about your operations. So once you were able to get inside the farm, what was the learning curve like for you and your team?
Um, I would say the learning curve would just kind of be getting familiar with the system, running the ins and outs. There are any system is going to have hiccups, right? So, nothing is perfect. When issues arise, you guys do a great job of working with Colleen and, working out those issues. I'm pretty familiar with, the injector systems and the systems that you guys use, but it is a very unique system. There's nothing out that is like the freight farm. I've ran 3 or 4 different hydroponic systems before I got into the freight farm, and the freight farm is definitely unique to its own with the vertical farming and then recycling all the water. So just kind of getting used to, the maintenance of the farm, if anything happens, fixing it, making sure everything's good. And we don't really have many issues, but like I said, everything, you're going to have some issues, but being able to work through the issues is a main thing. Always having a point of contact to work through. Colleen's great. She picks up the phone really anytime you call, and unless she's on a flight, and she'll let you know and calls you back. She's busy going all over the place as well. So I would say just really figuring out, the electrical mapping of the farm, how the waters ran, everything like that. So that would be, I'd say, the main learning curve. Everything else I was pretty familiar with just because I have a background in this. But yeah, I was just figuring out how the farms work, and then just try to use the tools of the farm to our benefit and trying to max out our output, I would say.
And do you think it's necessary for somebody to have agricultural background like you did?
I don't think so. If you're, running one farm, I definitely think it's a huge help. You guys do have your training and stuff, but it's definitely a huge help when stuff goes wrong, and then identifying, issues with the plants and stuff. And we try to do a ton of different things as well, trials and stuff like that. So working that out helps. But from the day-to-day processes, I think, majority of people after doing your guys' training and stuff, they could handle the farms.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for everyone on the call, we do offer a variety of training options, one including a 2-day farm camp here in Boston. Can you discuss the labor the farm requires? So how much time, were you spending just on the one farm, and then how did that change when you added the other two?
So I work there full time. We have 2 employees for 3 farms. We try to, we're in a hospital setting, so we keep everything meticulously clean. We spend a lot of hours cleaning, probably more than we should. But we have also systems in place where we have to track everything and trace everything. So I would say per farm would be roughly 25 hours a week of day-to-day stuff. But then we get wrapped up a lot because we do constantly, we have 2 or 3 tours a week. We do team building stuff with nurses and doctors and stuff. They'll come out and do team building events. We have schools where kids come in and do, the kids will come in and plant seeds, and then they'll transplant and harvest. So we do a lot of extra stuff besides the farming. So I would say farm wise, it's roughly about 20 to 25 hours, more to 25 hours a week of, the day-to-day stuff. And then cleaning is a lot. Doing tours is a lot of our time. And then training stuff. So yeah, we stay really busy, but we like to keep ourselves even busier than probably need to be. But yeah, that's just because we like to keep everything super clean.
Yeah, no, that's great. Can you actually expand a little bit on the team building you mentioned with the nurses?
Yeah, we've done some team building with nurses. Well, they'll come out and, they can plant seeds, and then they can come back 3 weeks later, 3.5 weeks later, and they can transplant their plants into the wall. And then we can do a harvesting where they come out and they harvest some of the plants. And then they, kind of so they can see the growing process, and then they get to go home with some produce. And it's a cool thing. They get in there and it's totally different than anything they've done on the healthcare side. So it gets a lot of laughs, and everyone seems to have a good time.
Oh, that's great. Do you have any volunteers who help out?
Yeah, we do have one volunteer, Danny. He helped out a lot when it was just me and the single farm. Now we have a full-time employee as well that helps me. But Danny is a huge help. He comes through, he does some of our seeding, he'll do some transplants. Anytime we need an extra hand, he's always there to help.
Okay. And so what is it, what does your day-to-day look like for you and Devin? And do you divide tasks, for certain days of the week?
Yeah. So basically, the way it goes is we go in Monday. Monday we harvest. That's our kind of our main harvest day. We get all three campuses. We're trying to add on a fourth campus right now. So as we'll go in and we'll harvest for the three campuses. It takes majority of the day to do that for all three farms. We bring it over, we come back, we clean. Tuesday we'll come in, we do all of our transplants, we transplant everything back in, calibrate, any sensors or anything that needs to get done on the calibration side. We'll do some seeds. Wednesday we come in, we harvest again. So we harvest Mondays and Wednesdays. So we'll harvest again on Wednesday, come back, clean. In between there, if there's any maintenance filters that need to be cleaned, then we transplant again. Thursday we'll do seedings, transplanting, and then we also for our food pantries we harvest Thursdays and Fridays. So we'll harvest and transplant again. It's really, majority of the time it's almost every single day we harvest, transplant, and then we get our seeds done in any time that's open slots. We, like I said, we work around a lot of tours and different little event things. We'll have events at the hospital where we'll pre-package like for almost we don't sell it, but it's like for retail lettuce. We'll harvest that and bring it to give out at different events, just AdventHealth produce. So that's kind of how it goes. It's a lot of harvesting, transplanting, and seeding.
And hopefully you take the weekends off?
Yes, yeah, but
Okay,
on call 24/7 in case something happens.
good. Which hopefully it doesn't.
No, rarely.
So can you talk a little bit about what you're currently growing and how you determine what to grow?
Yeah, so we kind of grow mainly on the needs of the hospitals and the cafes. We use a lot of lettuce because that lettuce goes to patients and the salad bar. So we grow a lot of lettuce. We grow a lot of kale. We've been implementing slowly more cilantro, basil, herbs, stuff like that. We have it set up where we have two farms that grow strictly lettuce. So we monocrop those two farms. And then we have one farm where we do Swiss chard, kale, radishes, turnips, basil, cilantro, some bok choy, and we've done a little bit of we do a little bit of mustard greens. The mustard greens are very strong, so you only need a little bit of them. But in that third farm where we do everything else, it's one full wall of kale, one full wall of Swiss chard, one full wall of basil, and cilantro, and then the rest is the radishes, turnips, mustard greens, stuff like that.
And talking about just one farm, like if you're growing just lettuce, about how much are you harvesting per week?
It depends. I would say roughly this we do like 600 to 900 heads. I say that we get around with. I say that because sometimes we grow different varieties that aren't as fast. If you're trying to go strictly for production, you can get your 8 to 900 heads. But we found that we actually labor wise, it's better for us to space them out a little bit more, get that better airflow, and then let them get bigger, and then kind of have bigger, less amount but bigger heads. Kind of helps us on the cost of plugs and having to do so many seeds and that route. So we try to make everything stretch kind of to get the bigger size. And so you could get your 8 to 900 heads, but we prefer to do our, like, I'd say 6 to 750 but bigger, stronger, hardier heads, just because of we got to clean all of them, we got to transplant all of them. It kind of helps on our labor side. But yeah, like I say, anywhere from 600 to 900 we kind of do.
Okay, that makes sense. And after you actually harvest, whether it's the herbs or lettuce, can you explain what that process is like in getting it over to the cafeteria?
Yeah, so kind of the whole process, we pop the panels off the wall, we take them out, we pull off any dead leaves, anything that, on the back side that wasn't getting light from the LED walls. We pull all that off, we visually inspect it, make sure it looks good. We throw it in our food safe bins, we label it. After we label it, we label, from which panel went into which bin, we record that. And then we weigh our bins of what they are. And then we weigh it, and then we mark down and record where each bin is going. And then from there, for Celebration, since we're on site at Celebration, we bring it directly to the cafe. They'll take it, they'll keep the plugs on until they're ready to use it. Then they'll remove the plugs, they wash it, they handle all the handling stuff on their end, they record all their cleaning and everything like that. And then for the other two campuses that are off-site, we bring it to our shipping and receiving dock. And then we have a food processing center that delivers every day to each hospital. So the food processing center will come, their truck will come, and we'll actually backtrack on their truck. We'll take our produce from our campus back to the food processing center, and then they'll hold it. And the next day they'll deliver to the other campuses, because we didn't, we're trying to save food miles and not have, our carbon footprint. So we wanted to find a way that we could bring the produce to the other campuses on a route that's already being used and not adding, extra miles. So that was the way that we were able to do that.
That's great. And do you find that the lettuce needs to be washed? And also just what's the shelf life?
Yeah, we definitely wash everything, rather be safe than sorry. We definitely wash everything. We let it soak for a bit and then throw it in the salad spinner, clean it all out, visually inspect it again. Just, we're a hospital, so we have high risk patients. So it doesn't take too long. We have a massive salad spinner. It's not that they got to rip the plugs off anyway. They rip it off, throw it in there, wash it, spin it. It's not too much of a grueling process at all. So that's kind of, yeah, we do wash everything. Our shelf life is much, much better. I know that was, we had to, I'm not I don't know directly exactly how many days it lasts, but I do know that our cafeteria had to rewrite their SOPs for produce because of the fact that if they were to stick to their older SOPs of when they were importing all their produce, they would be throwing a lot of perfectly fine produce away because it did last longer. That's in the refrigerator, keeping it there. And then another huge thing for us was it actually lasts longer on the salad bar once it's out there. It doesn't wilt as quickly, and doing that we were able to keep our salad bar open for longer hours so the night shift nurses could come in, and that opened up a whole new market for us and help us retail a lot more salad.
I bet the night shift workers probably appreciate that.
Yeah.
And what's so beyond staff, what it sounds like they've been thrilled with this. What has the response been from patients and just the wider community to having fresh, locally grown produce now available?
Yeah, the staff definitely loves it. That's a huge benefit there. They like it. We just got approved not too long ago. I'd say roughly 2 months ago, we got approved to give it to the patients. So we haven't really got, a ton of feedback just yet from the patients, and we don't really have a system in place to, ask directly about the produce. But I was just a patient, I just had my kid at the hospital, and it was very nice when they called and they asked, what you wanted. We got the salad, and it was the Freight Farms lettuce that came, and it was, nice, crispy, clean, good tasting produce. So that was really nice and rewarding to see. So they definitely do enjoy it though.
That's awesome. And congratulations again on your first child. So let's move on a little bit to compliance. So you just mentioned that you were able to get certification to actually serve to patients, which is a big deal. Can you talk a little bit about that process? And, and even in addition to that, did you have to get any other kinds of certifications, even just to serve it in your salad bar?
Yeah, we do internal audits. So that was our main thing. And then we worked with the Osceola County agriculture team and kind of went through a premise audit and made sure that we were up to date with all the premise stuff. We didn't go through the premise certification. We just made sure that everything was up to par for what they expect. And then we kind of do our internal audit and traceability program ourselves. As for that, we have a great nutritional services director leader, Joey. He works through a lot of that stuff. He loves the farms. He's a big proponent of the farms, and he kind of did, he's the one that was able to make all that happen, and he did a great job with that. So he would be a great person. I could give you his email, and if anybody has questions, they can reach out to him because he's an awesome tool and asset for our team here.
Awesome. So I know you mentioned that the cafeteria has its own SOPs, which they had to change a little bit due to the increased shelf life, but you must have your own SOPs, I would imagine, in the farm as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, and can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe what some of them look like?
Really it's just, the traceability program, seeing where everything goes so we can keep an eye on everything. If there happened to be a recall, that we had issues with, we could pull, those bins from that farm and those panels. So that was the main thing that we implemented. We number our trays to see where the tray goes from the, 288 cell count trays to all of our panels, and then from our panels to our bins, and then our bins to the hospital's bins, the cafeteria's bins, I should say. It was that, just making sure we record every time we clean our bins, what we clean it with, cleaning the farm, the schedules of cleaning the farm, all of our SOPs like that is just really the main deal behind it was the cleanliness and making sure that, everything stays sanitary and clean.
Awesome. How often do you have audits done in the farm?
We go through, it's usually every 3 to 4 months. We kind of walk through the premise audit and go through there. And then twice a year, we'll have Osceola County rep come out and just kind of walk through the farm and make sure everything's up to par.
Okay, great. Let's turn to sustainability. So, we know it's a top priority for AdventHealth, and the hospital system is looking at implementing many different sustainable options from solar power and now freight farming. In your opinion, how has the freight farm program driven the hospital's sustainability goals on campus?
I would say, it just, with the slim amount of water it uses and the amount of food it produces, that would be the main thing, is not having to import all the food and then throwing away all that food. All that food gets grown, traditional agriculture uses tons of water. A lot of times it gets shipped in from, overseas, different countries and stuff. So I would say that was the main thing, is being able to grow the produce on campus with minimal water, and kind of being able to control our production of everything, would be the main sustainability point, was growing all the food but not adding any carbon footprint, actually reducing the amount of food that gets brought in to our hospital.
Okay, great. So let's chat a little bit about how AdventHealth uses the farms for community engagement. So I know you already mentioned that you have nurses sometimes come in for team building opportunities, and you have school visits. Do you see the freight farm as a really effective tool for this kind of community education or outreach?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a tool that we use for the community, even for, when we have different healthcare associations come in. We did tours just last week. We had a group from Peru that came through. We've had groups from Dubai come, Venezuela, all different countries, people that are here, they come out and see the farms. And then as far as the community, we have like gardening for seniors. They've come and done tours in the community and stuff like that. The school across the street, they take advantage of the farm a lot. What they do is they teach their kids a little bit about hydroponic farming. So when they're doing their fractions and like learning fractions and stuff like that, they're learning how to feed, the nutrients, and use fractions. So that was pretty cool. And then when they come to the farm, they kind of have an understanding of what we're doing, and they are able to ask more questions that are, directly towards farming, and it kind of helps engage them into wanting to pursue agriculture as, a profession, because a lot of times, traditional agriculture isn't that appealing. You go out to a farm and you're like, oh man, this is hard work, which it is very hard work. And the freight farm's hard work too, but it's nicer when, the kids come through and they see the cool lights and they see all the plants on the wall, and, they have a screen that has all the information on it. And, they really like the modern style farming. So that's really cool. And then just the tours, I'd say that is the main thing. People come to the hospital, people from the community, they want to see the freight farm. They've never heard anything like it. Even when they walk up to the farm, they're looking at it and they're like confused almost. um, they they don't believe that, we kind of on the walk over, I'll explain what the farm is, and they're looking at it and they still kind of come up confused, and then you open the door and they're like, just they get really surprised when they see it. So it is a big thing for the community when all the tours and the team building and students, it's just kind of hits all the different aspects of the community, I'd say.
That's great. And I would assume you could see this model being replicated by other healthcare facilities.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's a great program that we have going on.
We touched on some of this already, but let's move on to benefits and successes. So I guess just overall, how do you feel that AdventHealth has benefited from having these 3 freight farms integrated into your campus and your cafeterias?
I think they benefited from, I mean, as I've said before, just better tasting produce, longer lasting produce. When those other healthcare facilities come and they see what we're doing, it kind of puts that idea out for other facilities. Like you said, Advent Health is a very, technologically improving and cutting company, and they want to see, they want to do everything they can to improve people's health. And there's a big push on our side as food as medicine. So this is a way that we're actually able to control the food that we're giving people and know that there's no pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, no dangerous chemicals that, systemic stuff that's been sprayed on the plants. And then being able to just know that, hey, every week that produce is going to show up. We've gone over 2 years now without ever missing a harvest. So being able to rely that that produce is going to be there, the quality is going to be what we want. I think that's the main benefit. And then just seeing everybody else enjoy the produce. We'll come out 2 months ago, we started growing Blue Magic kale, and it's this kale that's, bright blue. And we put it out on the, doctor's lounge and the, salad bar, and everybody was so interested in it because they've never seen anything like it. So we're able to grow things that a lot of people have never seen before. When we donate to different schools, they'll send us, cards and pictures of the kids. We'll donate lettuce and bok choy and mustard greens and stuff, and they'll cut it up and teach kids how to make soups and salads. So something that they never had done before, now they're able to learn how to make a soup and learn how to make a salad. So that's also a big benefit for the community.
And do you actually label the produce at the salad bar so visitors, for example, know that it has come from your homegrown
Yeah.
operation?
Yeah, we have signs in the hospital. We have, on our TVs in the cafeteria, we have pictures of the freight farm. We have a big poster that shows talks all about the different facts and benefits of the freight farm. So
Awesome.
we like everybody to know where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a statistic earlier in the presentation that basically showed that your salad bar sales grew by 238%. And I think that was just from that first farm. Is that right?
Yeah, so the main reason behind that also is obviously the better tasting produce helped it lasting longer, us not having to throw away 20-30% of the produce. And then opening up those hours for the night nurses, right? So the nurses work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the day nurses that would come in would have access to the salad bar, but the night nurses wouldn't have any access to the salad bar. So now they're able to come in, and that opened up a whole new set of consumers for us, was able to reach those night nurses. And that's something that everybody at Advent Health kind of wanted, because the night nurses were only able to get stuff off of the hot bar, and we wanted to be able to offer them a fresh produce option.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any other last thoughts on benefits or successes that the farms have had for Advent?
No, I mean, there's a ton of them, but I think we already kind of touched base on majority of them.
Sounds good. Let's move on then to advice for other healthcare institutions. So, in your opinion, what are some key lessons learned from implementing freight farms at Advent Health that might be applicable to other hospitals?
I would say the main thing to really think about is making sure you do have the right operator, right? Because you can train somebody to do all this stuff and how to run the farm, but if they're not there and they don't take pride in their work, um, what you do today doesn't affect you tomorrow. It affects you in 8 weeks. If I don't plant my right amount of seeds, and I'm not going to have enough to fill up the walls, and then we're going to have a limited harvest in 8 weeks. So I think finding somebody that, not necessarily, you don't have to have a huge background in agriculture, but has a passion for it and really understands the uniqueness of the position, and doesn't take it for granted. I think that's the main focus. Everything else you can work out, you can learn, you can train somebody and do that. So I'd say the main thing to make sure of another healthcare facility, because of the fact we're a healthcare facility, there's not like a manager or a director that will be, if you just have one farm, you have one operator. You don't really have somebody that knows the farm to keep that person in check. So it's that person that's running the farm is responsible and needs to be a very, self-motivated person, because you're not going to have somebody looking over your shoulder saying, hey, did you plant your 1,000 seeds this week? Did you fill up the walls? You need to have that person be able to make sure that he does everything that needs to be done, basically. So I'd say that was the biggest issue that our farm had, was the original person they put in place. He was totally capable of doing everything. He knew how to run everything. He did the training. He was able to run it. He just wasn't doing enough of the groundwork to put the farm at full production. And if your farm isn't, near full production, if you're only producing a quarter of what the farm can produce, then it's really not worth it, because you're not producing, enough to make everything, make sense. So I think that was the main thing, is once, I kind of got in there, I love what I do. I understand this is a very unique position that I have. I'm very grateful for the position I have. So we make sure that the day that we harvest, the next day, or if not the same day, we're transplanting, filling up those walls.
Great. And how do you see vertical farming, which is under the controlled environmental agriculture umbrella more broadly? How do you see that evolving in the healthcare sector?
Say that one more time.
How do you see vertical farming kind of fitting into the healthcare sector?
I think, the healthcare is, always growing, right? It's a limit. The great thing about the farms is they take up virtually no area. Like our farm takes up roughly 4.5 parking spaces, and we have 3 farms that take up roughly 10 parking spaces in total. So being able to produce a ton of food in a small area, doing that through growing vertically and instead of growing like traditional agriculture, I think that's just a huge benefit, right? And as I was reading this one interview, there's more and more produce is getting imported, and less is grown here in the United States. There's actually the same amount of farms as there was in the Civil War, and we have that many more people here living in our country. So I think the main thing is that in the future, it's going to be more and more important to be able to grow a lot of food in a small space. Celebration is a very densely packed area. There is not many farms within anywhere in Celebration. So the fact that we have, a 10-acre farm and, 9 or 10 parking spots is a huge benefit to our healthcare facility.
Well, that's great. Any thoughts on the future of farming within Advent more broadly? So right now you have 3 farms, hopefully more at the Celebration campus, but obviously you have, what about 50 other locations?
Yeah, so we have some locations that are in more lessly densely packed areas. Um, so I think the main thing is, we want to get some of these farms in areas that are, in like Colorado, where it's really cold and they have a harder time growing outside year round. Or we have some in Kentucky that are in Kansas that are, we want them to be self-sustainable as well. And then as far as Central Florida, our long-term goal is to have, a good amount of these farms at our food processing center. So it's already there. And then we can just bring our food or our produce right to the food processing center and deliver through all the Central Florida campuses. Had talks about the West Division. They're interested in getting a farm and working over there. So yeah, I see in the future, as there's a bigger and bigger push for fresh produce. As the price of produce keeps going up, I think it will only be more beneficial for more and more campuses throughout our system to have the farms.
Fantastic. All right, at this point, we're going to move on to our Q&A. Thank you for everyone who put questions in the chat. We have a lot of them to cover, so we'll try to do as many as we can in the next 15 minutes.
Sounds good.
First one, Sean, what have been pest or disease challenges you have faced with the system?
I would say we haven't had really any disease issues. No like PM or anything like that. No, really not much mold issues either. The main really only pest we have, I would say, is like fungus gnats. But anytime that you have water and light, you'll have algae, and the fungus gnats, they feed on the algae. It's a pest that's not feeding on your plants. So it's really not a horrible issue. Majority of farms, indoor hydroponic farms, it's a constant battle with fungus gnats. We run a 15%, or sorry, 15 milliliters a gallon. We use Xeritol HC. So we do a Xeritol dose, about 15 milliliters if we notice them, and then we stay on like a 7 to 8 milliliter ratio per gallon to maintain and kill any of the fungus gnats.
Yep. Okay, great.
And that's all organic. It's just hydrogen peroxide, vinegar, and some other stuff inside the Xeritol. So it's a very clean and sanitary product to use.
Okay, that's great. How much time did you have to tweak dosing or lighting formulas to optimize production for what you wanted to achieve with your produce?
So I would say, we've run a few different nutrient lines, but we really are kind of staying with the Freight Farm nutrient line. It's a recycling system. So that was the Freight Farm nutrients. I believe it's your guys' own blend with age-old nutrients. Works really, really well. So we kind of stick with that. We've tried pushing, the EC up, lowering it down at different times. But we kind of really stick with the Freight Farm's recommended nutrient line. You guys have the recipes already kind of tweaked for you, so that helps out a lot. We do add some different things. We add silica, we add HydroGuard. We do add a little bit extra CalMag on our end. Just different things that we've noticed to try to push. We run HydroClean is another one. It's all organic, bacteria to help break down the salts in the root zone. So for the baseline stuff, we use the Freight Farm nutrients, but we also add in some other things and just trial and error. But I wouldn't say like tweaking it to make it work or have issues. It's really just, how can we push it a little bit harder without getting tip burn or stuff like that.
Excellent, thanks. Can you talk a little bit about the food safe bins that you use after you harvest the produce?
Yeah, they're just commercial. I think they're 25-gallon bins. They're made by Rubbermaid. They're I forget the acronym they use, but if you look online, food safe bins, there's tons of options that pull up.
Okay. And have you actually, just from an ROI perspective, have you calculated the actual cost to produce one head of lettuce? And I think that probably also has to include the savings from not purchasing that lettuce.
Yeah, no, I know my director, I kind of just run the farms. I am the hands-on guy. My director handles a lot of the different, pricing and stuff like that. So I can, Allison, you have Christy's email. So if they have any questions, they can reach out to her. But I'm not too familiar with that exactly because of the fact that we're constantly, adding this in, taking this out. But for a bare bones price, yeah, we could definitely get that.
Great. Yeah. And for anyone on the call who wants to have a conversation, I'm happy to connect them to Christy at AdventHealth. So you can just email me directly, Allison with 1L at freightfarms.com. Okay. Energy usage. What is your kilowatt per hour energy usage per container?
We run just the standard performance or standard mode. We don't run the performance mode just because the performance mode, here in Florida in the summer, it produces a ton of heat here. So to combat the heat from outside plus the lights going on and full power, The AC can keep up 100%, but we like to, give it a little bit of a break sometimes when we have these 100+ days. So we kind of stick to standard mode. As for what it uses, I don't know the exact kilowattage. We don't have a meter on each farm, but I know Freight Farm on your guys' website, you guys have all that information on there.
Exactly. Are there lots of parts to maintain in the farm for you? And what has been the typical maintenance routine? Daily, weekly, monthly?
Um, a lot of parts to maintain. No, the parts, everything, parts, obviously stuff breaks. We have two brand new farms that we haven't had many issues with at all. They all do come with the warranty. So, just like anything, I mean, I've worked in, 12,000, 14,000 square foot farms. You can buy stuff brand new and it has an issue. So there are kind of, once you get everything going, there are some parts like, we had a light go out, but within three to 4 days, Colleen sent a brand new light to us, and then we installed it. And if we had any issues installing it, you can FaceTime her and she'll walk you through it. So but other parts, main thing is just keeping all the lines clean, right? You're running nutrient dense water through these lines, so there is buildup. So just making sure that it's clean. We usually do, on Fridays when we have some time before we leave for the weekend, we walk through all the farms and, clean out all the filters, clean out all the lines, calibrate our sensors and stuff like that. But it's not, a full day process. I would say it's about a half a day to clean through everything, make sure. And that's us going up and beyond, but you could probably get away with doing that once a month, realistically, but we do it once a week.
Okay, that's great. And for anyone who's, listening on the call, we have maintenance SOPs we're happy to share with you. Can you talk about more about what you mean by visually inspecting the lettuce pre and post washing? What exactly are you looking for? And do you find that you have a lot of quote bad leaves?
So basically, we're doing everything on these panels. So you have a panel like this and your heads are growing on this side of the panel. Then you have a light right here. So that light goes on on the front of the lettuce. On the back side of that lettuce where the leaves are actually kind of touching the panel, they're not getting any light, right? They're not getting any light or not much airflow back there. So those leaves are the ones that tend to be dead, or a lot of times when your plants, if there is a little bit of a nutrient deficiency, your plants will pull from your back outer leaves to promote the new growth in the center. So a lot of the times those back leaves are the ones that have a little bit of tip burn, or they're yellowing, or they're just dead because they're the original leaves that we planted with. At the beginning, when you plant your seedlings on the wall, sometimes if the immature plants are too long, you're planting a plant that's growing vertically, just straight up and down, to putting it on a wall to the side. So it's got to fight that gravity. So a lot of the times the new growth starts to grow up, and then the old leaves that didn't have that stem strength at the beginning will die off. So a lot of times that's what it is that will pull off. So like any tip burn, any yellowing leaves, any dead leaves, making sure, sometimes you'll have water flow out and run on one, and then it won't look as visually appealing. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Okay. So obviously you have a lot of heat down in Florida. Have you considered covering the containers with a sun's shelter or some kind of shade to actually lower the heat?
No, we do have oak trees that cover them, so we do get a decent amount of shade from that. But the farms are insulated really well. I mean, from the inside of the farm, if you go to put your hand on the top of the farm, you're not going to feel heat leaching through the storage container. So I would say that we don't have any plans to cover the farms. They do well just where they're at.
Okay, perfect. Just talking about labor a little bit, are you, worried about finding the right operator? So, if you were to expand operations, you need to find more people. What's your plan for finding the right people to operate the farm?
We're kind of in a position now where if we were, whenever we get more farms and we get more operators, I can oversee them. I know exactly what the farms can produce. So if when we hire somebody, they'll go with you guys and do a little bit of training, then they'll come with us, and our plan is to do, a 3-week kind of training boot camp as well. And then we're not really worried about finding the right operator for more farms, just because, we know you can't really I would be overseeing the person and making sure that they're doing exactly what they need. I would say that would be the main thing, is if you have somebody that knows the farms and knows what they can produce, you can't really come to me and tell me, hey, the farm's only producing 300 heads a week. I'm going to say, hey, why? It can produce 800-900. What are you doing wrong? So I would say that was the main thing, is we don't really have any concern, because I would be overseeing any of our new operators.
Okay. So when you first received the farm, how long was it before you were actually able to start harvesting?
Okay, so it took us about 5 days to set up. When you get the farm, all the panels, you have to pull out the foam strips, put in your cotton wicking strips, clean it up, put all the panels on the wall. There's 88 panels, 5 strips per. So what that comes down to, roughly 350 strips you got to pull out and put in. So I would say that filling up the tanks, cleaning them out, vacuuming out, making sure that there's no debris from the drilling and the milling of putting the farms together. So there's that. When for us, what we were able to do is, when the farm, we knew the date that the farms were coming, so we were actually able to plant all of our seeds in our current farm that we had on site. So by the time the farms were there, we already had plants 3 weeks old to plant in our new farm. So it only took us, once we got the farm, say a week for setup, and then another 6 weeks till we had our first harvest, because it takes roughly 8 weeks for everything to grow, 7 to 8 weeks. So if you were to have a new farm and it was your first farm, I would say it would take you about a week for setup, and then it would take you, the 8 weeks from seed to harvest. So you're looking at 9 to 10 weeks, I would say.
Okay, great. All right, this is going to be the last question due to time restrictions, but is there anything that AdventHealth would have done differently if you started the Freight Farms journey over?
Anything that we would do differently? Now to give me a second to think about that one. Everything's been running really, really well. We at one point we were going to put a freight farm at each campus, and we were very close to doing that. And then we backed off that and decided it would be better to kind of have a headquarters. So that way, if there was an issue, we could have, 2 people run 3 farms. Anything that we do different? I don't think so. I mean, some of the varieties of plants that we've done, just like outside, some plants do better in the environments than others. So that took us a little bit to figure out, exactly what grew the best and the fastest and got us, the heaviest weights. If I could go back, the main thing I would probably do is what we did on one of our new farms with Colleen, was set up those inline filters. That is something that I wish that we would do from day one, because that kind of helps with the labor. But as far as like setting it up in a different place, I'm very happy with the situation we're in right now.
Awesome. Sean, thank you so much for your time today.
No
Hopefully
problem.
this is useful for everyone on the call, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with many of you. So have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Allison.